Good morning, and welcome to the Crisis Planning Project for Module 5 that I'm going to be discussing with you today. Just first off, I want to go over a few goals for this presentation. First off, we're going to go over a company overview and get to know a little bit about the company and where they come from and sort of where they are today. Then we're going to identify the crisis or a crisis that I am seeing. We're then going to go into how this crisis impacts various stakeholders with the company. And then finally, we'll move into a proposed solution. All right, so as far as a small company overview, this is a small local not-for-profit health insurer founded in the 1970s. Up until 2011, this company actually insured a captive market of teachers and government workers. With the enactment of Act 10 legislation, which removed some collective bargaining and had some impacts with the medical or the healthcare field, or excuse me, the health insurance field. The company that we're talking about here actually lost that captive market. So from 2012 to 2017, after Act 10 was enacted, and our company lost their monopoly, if you will, it was a really tough time for the company. I wasn't here, but my understanding was that there was mass firings and layoffs as their market share was heavily compromised by for-profit insurers that had come into the market, or that were able to now enter the market and provide very competitive rates. 2018 was a diversification year for the company. They wanted to expand their business into other markets and provide kind of a different product offering to kind of cast a wider net. And then really 2019 through today is when I've been with the organization, and it's really we're kind of seeing a crisis continue to become more apparent as time unfolds, and we're going to go over in a second what that is. So, excuse me. The crisis really is that the company is struggling to be profitable, and from our learnings, we know that this is really a violation of contextual obligation from various stakeholders. The main one being sort of the board of trustees, which is there to govern the company on behalf of our members, our customers. I always like to understand or try to get to a little bit better understanding of why this crisis exists. And so I've used a method called the 5 whys to help kind of get down to that point. And maybe not get to the point, but I try to identify that crisis a little bit more specifically, and what's actually causing that. So I believe that the company is unprofitable due to high expenses and high waste. I think that there's a lot of high expenses due to less than advantageous contracts that we're able to make, as well as just years and years of systems and process bloat, especially due to being to having that captive market and not really needing to compete. We were able to kind of be a little bit complacent in how we utilized dollars because they were guaranteed. And so I think that has led to some inefficiencies that we are now feeling the pain from. I think this is really due to the company's ability to capitalize on market and regulatory changes. So we don't have great contracts, or there's certain instances we don't have great contracts. And, I think that's because we're not really able to capitalize on different changes in the market quick enough. And so we're just seeing less advantageous contracts from that. And as well as just a history of uncompetitiveness, like I spoke to before. We've been able to kind of navigate this field for a long time without having to be competitive. And really, I think all of this is just comes down. And really, I just think that's due to companies, my company's workforce not really being able to prioritize things correctly and just having conflicting priorities. That really has not allowed us to capitalize on any of these opportunities we're seeing, and we're not really able to get things on the market quick enough to see that change and some of that some of that success that we're hoping to see from those changes that we're trying to enact. So now we move to how does crisis really impact our stakeholders and why that really matters. Um, as you can see here from the picture, we have the company and sort of some large stakeholder groups that all have um, different relationships with the company, right? And it's really a balancing act between these stakeholders and the company and the value proposition that we're providing them. Stakeholders today have more options than ever in terms of products that they get to choose, places that they get to work, and the need to feel satisfied is real, and we as a company have to be willing to kind of make sure that we are satisfying all of our stakeholders and not just some of them. The world is continuing to change quicker and quicker, and our ability to adapt needs to be quicker and quicker. As a professor that I had once said, change is happening so fast and so much so that the businesses can no longer think about crisis as a rare, once in a lifetime event. These changes and these opportunities are happening every day, and companies really need to learn how to best deal with them. As we all know, any crisis really has the potential to threaten each stakeholder's value proposition that they have with the company, and some of these crises are not always detrimental, but as Fudic, Combs, and Botero once said, some crises can damage the reputation of an organization and can induce negative responses from angry stakeholders. And so finding ways to mitigate that as much as possible would really behoove a company to look into. When we're dealing with crisis, that's really distraction from other things. And if we're not planning for crisis, then we're diverting energies and time from trying to be more competitive and create that bigger market share within the company. So I really like Helio Garcia, when he was talking about competitive advantage when it comes to capitalizing on opportunities, and he said our competitive advantage is really being able to be agile enough to capitalize on new opportunity faster. And we really need to see that ineffective crisis management is a competitive disadvantage. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the company, a bit about the crisis, and got a little bit into understanding why crisis is important when it pertains to our stakeholders and why companies should care. Now let's move a little bit into an exercise that I did in regards to how this crisis really impacts each of these individual stakeholder groups. And so I'm using a model from, I always feel like I get his name wrong, but Fedek, Combs, and Botero from 2010. And I really like this model because I think it articulates, the process that stakeholder groups go through when a trigger event or something, or a crisis, or in this case, a violation of contractual expectations is breached. I like how it's just kind of a contained process, and so we're going to kind of use this to go through what I'm seeing as sort of the main stakeholder groups and the impacts that I think this has. But generally speaking, I think the approach for any type of reconciliation is to understand what impacts the thing you're trying to do will have on your stakeholder groups, and I think that understanding how each of them will perceive that and understand that and internalize it and work with it can help really build out whatever plan that you go forward with. All right, let's go and get started. So the first group that I mentioned is really the board and kind of our members, right, and the value proposition impacts. So the trigger for this, or the contractual expectation breach, is that it's not a non-profitable leadership team. The board is really there on behalf of our members to hire a leadership team and ensure that they are keeping the company in a profitable path. And so I think for them, seeing that we're not profitable, that would be the trigger for them. I think that they would hold responsible probably the company leadership as a primary, and maybe secondly to themselves because they would hire them. Um, but it's probably company leadership. And the moral outrage would be how, sort of selecting current leadership or failing leadership reflects on a board member's personal performance and business acumen. And there might be some, feelings of, I don't know, regret or shame might be kind of a strong word, but, um, you know, feeling they didn't do the best job that they could have. So the potential outcome that I see for this is that the board might need to consider a strategic leadership change, which would cause major disruption and shift, but they're not seeing profits being generated from the current leadership. Additionally, I think that there might be additional safeguards and scrutiny put in place for future leadership to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. So really kind of a modification of the relationship that the board has with company leadership. All right, so the second stakeholder group is the employees and the value proposition impacts that they have. The trigger for them is a non-profitable employer, so the company itself. I think responsibility would be laid at the company leadership and probably competitors. I think as workers in any industry, we understand the limitations that our company has, but additionally, we understand the market pressures that we're seeing from competitors within the market. Moral outrage probably be with leadership and you know just that the work that everyone is doing is not hitting meeting the mark or hitting the bar, and then it's just I think a lot of companies that are struggling go through this where the employees are being asked to do more and more and more and no real gains are being seen. Some unfortunate outcomes from this is, I think, unnecessary fear, frustration, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FIFUD, as I call it. I think employees are just, they don't, I think they're frustrated with how things are going, and there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the future of their employment and future of their career, and just what tomorrow sort of holds. And that kind of plays into number two, which is loss of employment or threat of downsizing as a potential impact if unpotential or unprofitable companies continue to manage in that way. All right, thirdly is competitors. The term for this is a non-profitable competitor. Response, who's responsible is, I think the competitiveness of others and maybe the waste of the company. Moral outrage, I don't know if competitors really have any moral outrage with a competitor, not being able to manage their own expenses and assets and human capital in a way that they can make them profitable. But potential outcomes of this relationship due to this crisis and nothing being done would be, potential for the competitor to pick up additional customers and increase their market share. In this particular case, with the company in question being a not-for-profit, there may be an opportunity for competitors to instill more capitalistic practices, and they can ensure that those become more commonplace, which would potentially increase the bottom line, but might reduce customer sentiment. All right, so here we come down to the solution. So the solution is really to become profitable, right, with the minimum negative disruption as possible. And I believe this is really around just reduction of priorities and refocusing of vision in our workforce. I think we do too much. Humans, we're kind of used to that. If we take on too much at once, nothing really gets done well. This idea of multitasking is nice, but it's not really effective. I also think we need to find ways to incorporate a more agile methodology. So really using kind of quick cycles, using a minimum viable product and minimizing our work in progress, but always to the delight of the customer, right? And really, as the last one mentioned, is just being customer focused. How can we create value for them, and really that being the prime focus of what we're here to do. I appreciate your time. I appreciate me kind of articulating the company and the crisis that we're going through, the understanding of the impact that crisis can have on a company, the model that we use to kind of understand how this crisis could impact individuals, and then my solution for getting us sort of out of that. I do appreciate your time, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.